Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the very best recording of Glinka's delightful overture to the opera Ruslan and Lyudmila. Now, Ruslan and Lyudmila is, of course, a tiny little piece. It's only around 5 minutes long or so. But this is one of the numerous talks I plan on doing on what we call fillers, overtures or encore pieces, things that usually show up on discs to try and pad them out. Not the main item, couldn't possibly be the main item. It's too short, but they're delightful and they're popular and everybody loves them, and they've been recorded 1 billion times, and most of those recordings are quite okay, I would say. Not great, not terrible, just decent. Everybody drags this overture out and plays it, and it sounds wonderful because it's amazingly written. Glinka composed it in 1842, and since then, everyone has loved the overture to Ruslan and Lyudmila. It's like the Marriage of Figaro overture. It's one of those short, peppy pieces that never fails to make an effect. It's amazingly scored. Glinka was really a modern master in that respect, and too little recognized, except in Russia, of course, where he's idolized as the father of modern Russian music, and rightly so, because his entire concept of orchestral sonority and his use of Russian folk music in works like Maravinsky, he was the fountain from which all else sprung. Unfortunately, he actually didn't write that much music, at least that much orchestral music, and he was kind of lazy and disorganized, and his works are kind of a mess, and so he's not as well known here in the West as he is in Russia, but that doesn't matter because we could talk about this thing now. Now, the fascinating thing about Glinka, in addition to the deliciousness of the Ruslan and Lyudmila overture, is that he's actually a sort of Rosetta Stone for the truth about performance practice, specifically proving the wrongness of the period instrument movement and claiming that orchestras did not use vibrato, because Glinka, in addition to being a remarkable composer in his own right and very forward-looking in many respects, was a vibrato guy. He actually indicated, he was one of the earliest composers to indicate the use of vibrato regularly and to tell us in the way he did it, writing for voices and instruments, that when he said vibrato, he really meant the kind of vibrato we mean, pitch vibrato, this thing on the violins or on string instruments. And you can see that in this very overture. I just think this is fascinating, and I know it's a bit of a digression from the recordings, but I just want to show it to you because this is how we know that the period instrument people who insist that vibrato was merely an ornament used for a note or two here and there back in the day are so full of crap. It's amazing. So let's take a look at the second subject of the overture, which I'm not even going to hum it. I'm just going to show it to you, because that makes life a lot easier for both of us, or all of us, or however. Here it is in the score. Here it is. You can see it's played by the violas and the cellos, and it's marked Cantabile. You see that? There it is. And you can see the Cantabile. It's right over here. See? Cantabile. Now, that tune is sung. It's a sung tune. It comes from the opera. It's sung by Ruslan in Act 2 of the opera. And it's marked Cantabile, meaning songful. Now, there are numerous early sources that tell us that when a composer writes Cantabile, that means that you use vibrato. But that's not even the point, because when that tune comes back, over here on page 46, it's played by the cellos alone. And when it's played by the cellos alone, you can see right here, it's up here, right over there. Is that it? Yes. That's it right there, right under where the finger is. You can see that Glinka marks it vibrato, specifically vibrato. Now, what does this tell us? Actually, this little word in this little place tells us a very, very great deal. It tells us, A, that cantabile and vibrato were in some respects synonymous, if not entirely so, that you could use them interchangeably, as Glinka does here. It also tells us that the idea that you only use vibrato on one or two little notes as an ornament is total hogwash, because that term applies to this entire melody, which goes on and on and on. It's the entire second subject, the songful second subject of the overture. And it's played by the cellos, then it's played by the full violins, fortissimo. And it's inconceivable that Glinka would have wanted it played vibrato the second time around, but not the first time around. You may wonder why then he said vibrato the second time and cantabile the first. Well, the first time you have violas and cellos doubled, and they're playing together. The second time you have just the cellos. So vibrato, it seems, was a kind of super cantabile. He wanted the cellos to have more sonority than they did the first time because they're no longer doubled. And so he uses the term vibrato as a more extreme form. But that doesn't mean, of course, that they didn't use any vibrato anywhere else. It's an absolute, utter absurdity that the character of that melody was supposed to be different on its two occasions. But more significantly, that tune is sung. It's sung by Ruslan in his big Act II aria. So we know that it is a piece of vocal music. And we know, since the dawn of time, anyone has told us that all voices sing with a natural level of vibrato, and all instruments are supposed to imitate that natural level of vibrato when they play a songful melody. And so all of these things put together in this handy little overture tell us quite a bit about what actual period performance was and should have been, because Glinka had the kindness to notate what most composers didn't feel was even necessary to notate, because it was simply understood that in a cantabile melody, that's what you did if you were a string player, even in the orchestra. So I just wanted to get that little tidbit out of the way, because it's so interesting to me that the people who claim to know these things don't seem to even know what the evidence of the scores that they perform actually says. And you wonder what a Roger Norrington or one of those idiots would do when they get a hold of this piece. I mean, it's so weird. Okay, let's talk about recordings now. Now, as I said, this overture has been recorded about 1 billion times. Everybody does it. It's delightful, it's charming, and of course it's virtuosic with the opening, with the amazing string scales going up and down and all over the place. And I'm going to play you a wonderful performance of it. One of the things about these is that there are so many good ones, and there's no point in me trying to go through 500 recordings of, a lot of very good ones. I'm going to play 2 outstanding ones, just to show you how, with a great piece of music, even a tiny piece of music, a short piece of music, a filler, it's possible to achieve extraordinary things, absolutely extraordinary things. So this is Karl Ancherl with the Czech Philharmonic playing the opening of the Ruslan and Lyudmila Overture. Have a listen to this. This is actually a terrific disc. You get Berlioz's Roman Carnival, Liszt Les Preludes, Strauss's Till Eulenspiegel, Weber's Invitation to the Dance, the Ruslan and Lyudmila Overture, Borodin's In the Steppes of Central Asia, and Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. That's quite a pile of stuff, all magnificently played by the Czech Philharmonic in its absolute prime under an inarguably great conductor. Notice the clarity of articulation, the excitement that he builds up, the precision of rhythm. I mean, it's just an amazing performance. It's wonderful. And you'd think that that's probably all there is to be said in this music, right? Wrong! Absolutely wrong, because there is always room for something more fantastically amazing, especially in a virtuoso firework piece like the Ruslan and Lyudmila Overture, because I now have permission to use recordings that have appeared on Scribendum, that fabulous historical reissue label that's got boxes and boxes of really, really cool stuff. And they have put out a Maravinsky box. This is Maravinsky in Moscow, 1965. Now, this has since been repackaged to be a Maravinsky in 65 and 72 with 3 more discs added. It's a steal at the price. The performances are amazing. They're live. They're incredible. And Maravinsky did this overture. It was a showpiece for him and for the orchestra that could play faster than any other ensemble at the time. But you have to get this version, Moscow 1965. This is the one to get of the Ruslan and Lyudmila Overture, because this is just jaw-dropping. And I don't even need to talk about it. Let me just play it for you. Listen to this. Same thing we just heard. Yes, you can see Maravinsky, sitting up there saying, "You will play or you will go to Gulag. Yes, Natasha. Oh, you will play faster than any human ever has." And boy, they do. Holy cow. But it's not just fast. It's accurate. It's amazingly accurate. It's brilliant. It's astonishing. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. And, one of the things about Maravinsky was that, he was a martinet. He was a disciplinarian, a taskmaster, a guy who had absolute dictatorial Stalinist control over his orchestra, kind of like Fritz Reiner in Chicago or George Sell. He was one of those. Most of his recordings are live because he did not like to make studio recordings. Most of us may have his famous recordings in stereo for Deutsche Grammophon of Tchaikovsky's 4, 5, and 6, one of the few things he ever did under controlled circumstances, and they are also astonishing. But wow, what he did with this overture, and this is another disc. Listen to what's on this disc. It's got, let's see, Ruslan and Lyudmila Mussorgsky's Dawn on the Moskva River, Lyudov, Baba Yaga, Shostakovich's Sixth Symphony, Glazanov's Entr'acte from Raymonda from Act 1, some more Mussorgsky. Oh, that we already did Dawn on the Moskva River. It's got Dawn on the Moskva River twice. Yes, it does. Who knew? When I first got this disc, it was on Melodia. It also had the Swan of Twinella instead of 2 Dawns on the Moskva Rivers, because these were encores from the concert, I gather. And then there's Lyudov's Baba Yaga. Again, you get 2 of those. And then Wagner. Oh, Wagner. The Ride of the Valkyries and the Prelude to Act 3 of Lohengrin. And that I must play you, this Prelude to Act 3 of Lohengrin. This is the most demented Prelude to Act 3 of Lohengrin you have ever heard. It is ear-splittingly, hair-raisingly, unabashedly vulgar. In the best sense. It's a party record. For those of you who like the Prelude to Act 3 of Lohengrin, you have never heard it played like this. which goes to show that in the final analysis, it all comes down to one's personal taste, or the lack thereof. And Maravinsky would do whatever he damn well pleased, and he didn't care about the consequences. And my God, did they play. I pity the trumpeters in that performance. It's just unbelievable. But it all goes to show, and this is the point, that even a small little piece like the Overture to Ruslan and Lyudmila, a wonderful, brilliant piece, has so much to tell us, not only about musicianship, about performance practice, about the history of notation, but also about what great orchestras can do, each in their own way, when they treat it like the masterwork. I mean, it's a masterpiece, like the masterpiece it truly is, and give it 110% effort, because every great piece of music deserves no less. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you for joining me in this talk about a tiny little filler that has a lot of big implications for how we listen to and understand music more generally. Take care.